Shalom Aleichem and welcome everyone as we're preparing for Shabbat Parashat Vayeitzei. The Parsha starts off Vayeitzei Yaakov mi Be'er Sheva Vayelech Harana. Yaakov left Beersheba and went to Harana. The Midrash Rabbah, the first Midrash Rabbah on this week's Parasha, says as follows: Rabbi Pinchas b'shem Rabbi Huna bar Papa patach. Rabbi Pinchas named Rav Huna bar Papa. He opened up on this week's Parsha and he said as follows, quoting a pasuk in Mishlei: Az telech lavetach darkecha im tishkav lo tibhad. Then you're going to walk securely on your way. Pasuk there in Mishlei says your foot will not stumble. And when you lay down, im tishkav lo tibhad. When you lay down, you will not fear. And the pasuk continues, you will lie down and your sleep will be pleasant. Okay, so Aslech lavetach darkecha v'aglecha lo tigof. Im tishkav lo tibhad v'shachavta v'arava shenatecha. And pleasant will be your sleep. This is talking about Yaakov Avinu. Person who walks he walks securely, he won't stumble, he lies down, no fear, he sleeps pleasantly. The Midrash Rabbah says, "As telech lavetach." Then, when you walk securely, Ze Yaakov, Dichtiv Vayeitzei Yaakov. Yaakov walked out. Im tishkav lo tibhad. And when you lay down, you will not fear. Who is he not fearing? Me Esav u'milavan. He's not fearing Esav, and he's not fearing Lavan. V'shachavta v'arava shenatecha v'yishkam b'makom hahu. Midrash Rabbah is telling us, Yaakov Avinu, he's running away from Beersheba. Why? Because Esav wants to kill him, right? His father said, go get married by Lavan. So he's leaving because Esav's there. And he's running to where? He's running another Lavan, another problem. From Esav to Lavan, from the fire to the frying pan, wherever which way you want to look at it. And meanwhile, he comes here, right? And he takes a nap. And he sleeps well. So much so, he sees a ladder going up. He's so sleeping. No problem. I don't know about you, if someone's chasing me or I'm looking into another problem, it's hard to sleep. Not Yaakov. The pasuk says he slept. No problem. The Midrash Rabbah says he's sleeping. And he's enjoying his sleep. You have a pleasant sleep. The Mishlei, Shlomo Melech continues, and the next pasuk goes, Ad tirari pachat pitom u'sat rishayim ki tavo. You'll not fear sudden terror. The way the article translates it, the Holocaust of the wicked when it comes, and this is it. And the reason why though this person can lay down and sleep and enjoy his sleep and not be scared of problems, Ki Adonai yeh b'chislecha. For Hashem will be your security. Hashem will be your protector. B'chislecha, v'shamar raglecha milachin, and He will guard your feet from entrapment. It's interesting that in order to show that Hashem is your protector, it uses the lashon of b'chislecha, a lashon that's very similar to the word or the month that we're in of Kislev, right? So much so, the Sefer Yetzirah says about, Sefer Yetzirah talks about every Chodesh and talks about Kislev. It says, Hashem enthroned the letter Samech, Hamlich Ot Samech B'Shena. He put it into sleep. Kislev, he put Samech, the word Samech, into sleep. And the letter Samech, V'Kasher Lo Keter, V'Tzar Bahem Keshet, V'Olam V'Kislev B'Shana. And formed it with the mazel of the archer. Right? In English, I think that's, I wrote it down. No, Sagittarius. Yeah, that's the archer. Okay? And the mazel of the archer in the space and the month of Kislev in time. Again, Kislev, and it talks about sleep. Kislev, B'Chislam. So much so that...
What chili, okay? I have 4 people here, that's it. So save the rest for Shabbat.
So much so that Kislev is about sleep. Somehow Kislev is about sleep. Vayar Elokim, the Midrash Rabbah says, Vayar Elokim et kol asher asa, v'hineh tov me'od. The Midrash Rabbah, it's recording. Everything you said is on tape. V'hineh tov me'od. The Midrash Rabbah says, when Hashem created the world, Vayar Elokim et kol asher asa, v'hineh tov me'od. And it looks very, very good. The Midrash Rabbah says, what is very good? What's this V'hineh tov me'od? Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar says, you know what a pasuk means, V'hineh tov me'od? When Hashem created the world, V'hineh tov me'od, he says, behold, sleep was very good. So V'hineh tov me'od is talking about sleep. Chodesh Kislev is something to do with sleep. Yaakov is going to sleep. Mishlei, when it's talking about sleeping well, it talks again by the lashon of B'chislecha, the lashon of Kislev. So there's a lot of, and then if you look through the next couple of parashot, again we have sleep. We have Yosef is going to go get some dreams in his sleep. Paro is going to have some sleep and dreams. A lot about sleeping. And it's Tov Me'od. It's the best thing. What does this mean to sleep? What is Yaakov sleeping? He's running away from Esav Lavad. The Midrash Rabbah starts off this week about sleeping. Another thing, if you can get sleep, right? It's a good sleep every night. But there is something to this sleep. I think last year I mentioned this in passing with the Dor Lador program, the story. And the story is the story that kind of pieces this whole sleep thing together. There was a famous entertainer, acrobist, if I'm saying it right. And his name, he's a Frenchman, Jean-François Gaverlet. And he had a stage name of Charles Blondin. And what was he famous for? He was famous for walking tightropes. And one of his biggest features that he ever did was walking the Niagara Falls. He had the rope going 1,100 feet long, 160 feet off the ground. And he would walk on it. The first time he walked on it, he would walk with his balance beam. Halfway through, he would throw the balance beam off. Then he would come back. He would come off the rope, come back with stilts. He would walk with these big feet, and like the clowns wear, and he would walk on it. Then he would carry all sorts of things back and forth while walking this tightrope. At one point, he even had like a frying pan. He started a fire on the rope, and he started cooking himself an omelet and eating it on there. And it became a very big sensation, and people from all over the world would come to New York, to the United States, to watch this. And we have these aristocrats, these noble people that came, and they were all watching Charles Blondin. It's a big thing. So Charles Blondin, after walking back and forth, he took a wheelbarrow, and he was carrying a sack of potatoes all the way across and back. Everyone was watching, oohing and eyeing. And he walks over to where the aristocrats are sitting, and he says to the nobleman, he says, do you believe that I can put a man in this wheelbarrow and walk with him all the way across the tightrope? So everyone says, sure. So he turns to the most important aristocrat there, and he tells him, hop inside, I'll take you across. And the aristocrat says, no. It's okay, I believe you, I'm not going in there. So he turns now to the whole audience. You believe me? They say, yes, you can do it. Who's going to come? Nobody came. Nobody said voluntary. Everyone was scared. And finally, the way the story goes, there are different versions of the story, but we'll go with this version. The story goes that an old woman comes out from the crowd, and she walks over and she says, I'll do it. I'll go into the wheelbarrow. I'll volunteer. And she goes in, and he takes her across. Everyone's ooh, ah, and he brings her back. And everyone ran over to this woman and said, weren't you scared? And she says, what's there to be scared of? That's my son. I know he's going to take good care of me. You see, what it means here, Yaakov was leaving Esav, going to Lavan, And when the pasuk in Mishlei says a person doesn't scared can sleep, it's because a person can truly sleep and have a good, real good rest if he believes in Hashem. In Kislev, the darkest month of the year, that's the time a person can get a little bit scared. It's so dark. There's things beyond our control that we can't do, we can't control, and Kislev is a dark time. But also, the lashon of a Kislev comes from the lashon of ksil, which means in Hebrew a fool. Why? Because the person has emunah and bitachon, a lot of people look at him as foolish. Right? He's a fool. Why are you doing things like why are you believing stuff that doesn't make sense? He has emunah, but they say he's ksil. If you take a look at the Alanisim that we say for B'mei Chanukah, it talks about the Chashmonoim, right? How many Chashmonoim were there? 13 or so? And they were fighting gazillion well-trained Greek Assyrian soldiers. And yet what happened? As it says in the prayer, Rabim, large groups in small hands. They fell into strong in the weak. How? Because when it's emunah. When a person, they thought they were crazy, they thought they were foolish. Ksil, they were all fools. And yet they had emunah. Because when a person has emunah, he's able to hop into the wheelbarrow. He's able to go, travel the whole world, no problem. On a tightrope nonetheless. This is what, starting off, Parshat Vayeitzei, we see the lesson of Yaakov and his sleep. A lesson for us that we too need to sleep. And the only way we're really going to get our sleep is if we put it in Hashem's hand. And we know Hashem is carrying us around in the wheelbarrow. What else do we need? That's all we need. Hashem to carry us in the wheelbarrow. And Baruch Hashem, no matter how tight the rope is, there's nothing to be scared of. Person goes at any point, he's going from Esav to Lavan, he's good, he's sure, he knows that Hashem will take care of him. That's our first piece for this week. Let's move on to another piece from this week's parasha. We have, in this week's parasha, Yaakov Avinu travels to Harana so he can get married. And he gets there, and now he finds Rachel, right? And the pasuk says when he sees Rachel, Vayishak Yaakov Rachel, Yaakov kissed Rachel, Vayisa et kolo vayefk, that he raised his voice and he started to cry. Now Rashi says, why did Yaakov cry? What was he crying about? So in the Dover Achar, in the second explanation that Rashi brings, he says as follows: Lefi Shabbat beyadayim rekaniot. He came empty-handed. He's coming to get married with nothing, right? Some yeshiva bachrim, they come around to get their own engagements with nothing in their hands. So Amar, he said, Eliezer Eved Avi Abba. Eliezer was my grandfather's slave. Hayu veyadav nizamim utzmeidim umigdanot. He had in his hand nose rings, bracelets, delicacies, vani. But I, in beyadi kilum, I have nothing. Why does he have nothing? Famous midrash. Lefi shiradaf Eliphaz ben Esav b'mitzvat aviv aharav. Eliphaz, Esav's son, was sent by his father lahargo to kill Yaakov v'hisigo, and Eliphaz found Yaakov, he overtook him. Ulefi shigadal Eliphaz b'heiko shel Yitzchak, but since Eliphaz grew up in the close embrace b'heiko, and close hug of his grandfather Yitzchak, mashach yado, he wasn't able to kill his uncle. Because he grew up next to Yitzchak, he wasn't able to kill his uncle. So Amar Lo, he said now to Eliphaz, I had a question. Shayla, what should I do? He says, Ma'ah said, L'tzivui shel Abo. What should I do? My father commanded me, he told me to kill you. I have to do kibbud avim. So Amar Lo, Yaakov told Mashibiyadi, take everything that I have. Yaakov had a lot. His father said him to get married, gave him everything. And now he said, take what's in my hand. Why? Because we have V'ha'ani hashuv kamet, because a poor person is considered like dead. Now, we have to know, first of all, who Eliphaz was. All right, what type of character he is. He seems to be embraced by Yitzchak. He seems to be a tzaddik. He's embraced by Yitzchak. He's asking Sheilot, how I go about by killing you, by not killing you. So over here, Rav Galinsky in the Haggadah says, you should know that Eliphaz really was as corrupt as his father Esav. The truth is, Eliphaz was intimate with one of his father's wives and had a son named Korach with her. He also was intimate with the wife of Seir, and he had a daughter named Timnah, who then later became his Pelagish, who later became his concubine, and from then they had Amalek. This is how bad this guy is. This is just on his relationship side of stuff. All right, and Yitzchak was Mikar of him. Yitzchak would give him a hug and be with him. Rav Galinsky talks about Chizkiyahu HaMelech. Chizkiyahu HaMelech saw that if he's going to have children, they're going to be very bad children. So he decided that he's not going to have children. Eventually, the Navi Yeshayahu comes to him and says, you're going to die because you're not having children. And he says, but I'm doing it L'Shem Shemayim. This is not your business to get into what's Hashem's calculations. Your business is to do the mitzvah for Revu. So he says, you know what? Give me your daughter. Maybe in the schus of your daughter and myself, maybe and yourself, maybe we'll have good children. He recovered from his illness. He married Yeshayahu's daughter. And they had two sons, Menashe and Rav Shakeh. One day, Menashe, he's carrying them to Cheder, carrying them to school, and he hears them saying one to the other. And one son says, look at our father's head. It looks good to roast fish on it. And the other son says, no. Our father's head looks good to bring korbanot to avodah zarah on his head. Chizkiyahu heard this and he dropped them both. And the story goes that one of them died. So Rav Shakeh died. Meanwhile, Menashe grew up and eventually he became king. And he brought avodah zarah into the Beit HaMikdash. He had his grandfather, Yeshayahu, who was the whole reason for him being alive, he has him killed, has many tzaddikim killed. Eventually, Nevi'im come and tell him you got to change, and he doesn't listen. Eventually, he's captured by Sancher, the Assyrians, and they put him into a copper pot. They place it on a flame, and he calls out to every avodah zarah to help him. And none of the avodah zarahs are helping him. And then he says, I remember my father once taught me there's a Hashem. And the Hashem can help you in any situation if you just return to him. So he does tshuva. And eventually the wind or whatever, the pot flew up, however you're learning. And he ends up back in Yerushalayim. He rules for another 33 years in righteousness. Gets rid of avodah zarah, puts back Talmidei Chachamim in place. And for 33 years of his rule, he becomes a tzaddik. Chizkiyahu HaMelech saw what his son wanted, saw what his son did, saw what he was doing, and he never gave up on him. He still continued to teach him Torah. There's a famous story this week in the men's Bayswater chat. Rav Danyarov put the video clip from Chacham Ovadia when one of these rabbis came to speak to him. And this rabbi was talking about how he has all these boys that were kicked out of yeshivot, and he's dealing with them. And Chacham Ovadia said over the story with the Hafetz Chaim. Famous story, the Hafetz Chaim. Hafetz Chaim once was, the way Chacham Ovadia gives this story, was as this way. There are different versions of how exactly it happened. The story is all pretty much the same, that Hafetz Chaim was giving a shiur, he was talking, he was giving a shiur to big oilam, and a Rosh Yeshiva walks in. A Rosh Yeshiva walks in, and the Hafetz Chaim doesn't pay any attention to him. In fact, he turns his back on him. The Rosh Yeshiva again tries to come later, talk to him again. Again, the Chafetz Chaim refuses to speak to the Rosh Yeshiva. The Rosh Yeshiva leaves, his Talmidim says, Chafetz Chaim, Rebbe, why did you do such a thing? This is a Talmid Chacham, he's a Rosh Yeshiva. You should talk to him. Why are you giving him your back? Why are you not listening, not talking to him? And the Chafetz Chaim says, You know Leon Trotsky? Leon Trotsky was born Lev Davidovich Bronstein. He said Leon Trotsky was one of the biggest people in communist Russia that had all the laws against Jews. And he says Leon Trotsky became Leon Trotsky because of this Rosh Yeshiva. This boy was in his yeshiva, and he started acting up, wasn't behaving the best, and he kicked him out of the yeshiva. And his mother came begging, please putting him back in the yeshiva. And the Rosh Yeshiva said no. And he didn't let this boy, Lev Davidovich Bronstein, to come back to yeshiva. And so he went out to a secular school, a communistic school, and he became Leon Trotsky. And because of him, so much pain, so much suffering, so much killing happened to the Jewish people. And so this Rosh Yeshiva I don't want to talk to. It's a responsibility of a father, a grandfather, the preschools, the Talmud Torahs, the yeshivot, Bet Yaakov, is that if you have a child growing by you, you must do everything to embrace them. And Has Shalom, never kick them out into the streets. The Chazon Ish would say, a yeshiva that throws a yeshiva bacher out because he's not learning so well or some other problems, it's like a hospital who would kick out very sick patients. We don't want to deal with you. Leave. You know? That's why they're there, to get fixed up. So the same thing is with yeshivot. And so we see that Yitzchak embracing Eliphaz, even though it made no sense, was what caused Yaakov Avinu to survive. The yeshiva who kicked out Leon Trotsky ended up Leon Trotsky killing Jews. It's so important that we never ever kick anyone out, and anybody that's in our sphere of influence as children, we have to do what we can to always bring them closer, give them a hug, and hug them not only physically where inappropriate, but to hug them with the spirituality, with ruchnius, that they come closer and closer to the Torah and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now we're going to move over to our third lesson on this week's parasha, something which I think you can't go through the parasha without learning. In this week's parasha, we have the Shvatim being born. Leah is the luckiest of them all, as she gets more than her fair portion, as there were going to be 4 imahot, 12 Shvatim, and she has a big chunk of them. And when she gives birth to Yehuda, the pasuk says as follows, which now became very famous, as Joey Newcomb put it into his song, and Hapam Odeh et Hashem, and she said, this time I'm going to thank Hashem. She gave birth to Yehuda, and she says, Hapam Odeh et Hashem, al ken kira shemo Yehuda. Therefore I'm going to call him Yehuda. Odeh Yehuda. Now what does the word Odeh mean? Seems to be thanks, right? Saying thanks. But there's another understanding of the word odeh, right? To be modeh. What does that mean? What does this modeh? Admit. So it means thank you, and it means admit. Which one is it? Or are they related? So Rav Hutner says, explains that there's a parallel between these two definitions of thank you and admit. He says, innate in nature, man seeks independence. Person seeks to be independent. He wants to have his own ability to fend for himself without requiring the services of another individual. Thus, when one says thank you, he's admitting that he needed help. So the admission, you're admitting the fact that you needed help. People, the human psyche is that you want to be self-sufficient. And if you're weak, and you're not self-sufficient, it's not a good thing, right? That's the way people look at each other. Look at themselves. However, we as Jews understand that we really can't do anything. And we acknowledge to the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is in charge. And as such, we're modeh that He's in charge, and modeh giving thanks that He's keeping us alive and well. So odeh means to both acknowledge that we need help, and we praise. Now, the Gemara in Masechet Berachot tells us a very interesting statement that needs a little bit of an explanation on this pasuk. The Gemara tells us that no one gave gratitude, no one said thank you to Hashem until Leah came and made this statement. Leah came and said, Hapam, Odet Hashem. The Gemara says, till here no one said they're going to be thanking Hashem. Now it's very hard to believe that. You have Abraham, you have Yitzchak, Noah, Adam and Rishon, what? No one said thank you? No one said thank you, Hashem, for whatever happened? Noah didn't say thank you for being slave from the Mabul? It's hard to fathom that. It's hard to believe that these tzaddikim, out of being saved from Kishon and Esho, he didn't say thank you from the fiery furnace. He didn't. Can it be? So what does it mean that until Leah, no one said thank you? So the few answers, we'll look at two of them tonight. Ksav Sefer says that there's there's two types of things that you can say thank you for. Right? We have Chazal that tell us that a person who says Hallel every day is not a good person. Now Hallel means to say thank you. Right? He's not a very good person if he says Hallel every day. Why is that? What's the reason why that is? It's because when we say Hallel, we're talking about overt miracles. Something that happens that we realize that it's something that's out of nature, and for that we're giving thank you. If we would say Hallel every single day in something that's extraordinary, as if we're saying Hashem created the world, not good, and every day He needs to intervene and make more miracles to continue in the world. And so a person who says Hallel every day is pretty much saying Hashem, you created the world in fault. It's not good, and you got to keep intervening. Hallel once in a while is when we say, everything is really good all the time, and something like HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you come in exactly when we need your help on this type of thing. But there's another thank you that you're supposed to say. Not just the Hallel thank you on overt miracles. There's the thank you to say for nature itself. Thank you, Hashem, for creating the world perfectly. Not just for Hashem, thank you for saving us. But thank you, Hashem, for creating the world the way it is, and everything is the way it is. The Ksav Sefer wants to say to Abraham, Yitzchak, all the tzaddikim, Noah, everybody before, would say thank you to Hashem for the miracles, the real big nisim that happened. But Leah was the one to say thank you on nature. It's the nature of a woman to give birth. You give birth once, twice, 3, 4, there's no reason to believe you can't give birth. And yet she still went ahead and said thank you on something that's natural, something that's not extraordinary, right? And for this, Chazal tell us, no one said thank you like her on nature before Leah came. He brings over here in the Pininim a story. A man once came into shul, and he brought with him a bottle of whiskey in the morning, and he made a little bit of a l'chaim there with everybody. And everyone said, what happened? Why making l'chaim? He said, I was walking down the street, and a car almost hit me. I almost died, but Baruch Hashem, I survived. So I'm bringing a l'chaim. Very good. Everyone said, l'chaim, l'chaim, you should live long, be well. The next day, another member of the shul came in with another bottle of whiskey. And he said, everyone come making l'chaim. And everyone said, what happened to you? Every day someone's getting saved. He said, nothing happened to me. Baruch Hashem, I walked down the street, no car came my way, nothing happened. Everything was beautiful. Everything was perfect the way it was. For this, I also want to give a l'chaim. The person has to know how to look at things, right? So a person takes a seed from an apple, from every fruit, puts it into the ground. All of a sudden, the seed germinates in the ground, comes out a tree. Eventually, fruit comes out. No one thinks this is a miracle. This is nature. It's teva. Now imagine you put a dead person in the ground. The next day you come, he's back out. He's already rejuvenated. He's in his youth again, and he's fine. How did that happen? You would be a miracle. Same thing. Why would anyone believe a seed going into the ground would do anything? Put a person in the ground. Does it do anything? No. Our mind has come to that, facts that seed in the ground grows. So we look at it as nature. Whereas you put a man in the ground, he shouldn't be coming back to life. And so if it happens, it's a miracle. The truth is they're all miracles. And some are natural, that we think are normal. And some are overt miracles, something that sticks out. Leah was able to say thank you on nature because she realized that nature itself was something to say thank you about. Hamodet Hashem. He brings here an interesting story that happened on the day of September 11th in 2001. That there was a shul, a makeshift shul near the Twin Towers. And they would pray every morning over there, and they would pray quick, and then they go to work right there. They pray next to it, and then they go to work. They said that morning they had a very hard time getting a minyan. Also, it was the first night of Sadichot or something. People were coming late. Also, it was the Shloshim. Some Jews were killed in a helicopter crash exactly 30 days before the Twin Towers. They worked over there, so a lot of people were at the Shloshim. And they had a very hard time to find a minyan. And it was getting late, time to go to work, but it was like the first day of Slichot, and they didn't want to not daven, so they kept looking for a minyan. And finally, right before everyone gave up, they had 9 people. Finally, the 10th person walked in. They said they never saw this guy in their life. They didn't even know he was Jewish. He walks inside, and he says, "Did you guys daven yet? I need to daven. I need to say Kaddish." They said, "Great, we're going to start right now." They wanted to start davening quick. He says, No, I need to daven for the Amid. I need to be the Shliach Tzibur. It needs to be me. So, and they're like, "Listen, it's very late." He says, "I need to." They said, "Listen, okay, you're the 10th guy. We'll give it to you." Suddenly he starts davening for them. It's a true story. He starts davening for them. And he's the slowest davener they ever found. He's davening so slow. Everyone's tapping their watch. Time, business, work, World Trade Center, right? And he was just taking his jolly time. People were, and people were just trying to get out. Finally, as they're about to get finished and leave the shul, the first plane hit the tower. And they see what's going on, the chaos, everything. Everybody's in there is like, oh my gosh. And they realize they only got saved because they were still in shul, and this guy was keeping them so late. So they looked for him. They were upset with him 2 minutes ago, not looking to say thank you. And they were looking around, and they couldn't find him. They don't know where he left. He didn't leave the shul, and all of a sudden he wasn't there. So the question is, was this Teva, or was this a Nes? Teva and Nes are really one and the same. It's just, how do you see it? How do you look at it? And this was Leah's specialty. To see nature, understand nature is nature, but understand that's still a miracle. That was from the Ksav Sofer. I want to bring from Rav Pan, the Shiva of Torah V'dat, how he understands Leah's unique praise and why she was the first and no one else was like this. He also talks about human nature, and he says human nature, that when a person achieves a happy milestone in life, he's full of joy and gratitude. Something new, something fresh happens, excited about it. The person is in Shidduchim, finally he finds the girl of his dream, or that what he thinks it is. She thinks that she found the perfect boy, and they're going to get married. It's a lot of simcha, a lot of excitement. Everybody's very excited. Then comes the work of planning the wedding. If they have to do it themselves, it gets a little bit troublesome. For if the parents are there, they can do everything even better. Then they get married, and then it starts to cool down. And the happiness starts to cool down. The same idea is, you have a baby. First you have a baby, it's exciting, everyone's coming. You make a kiddush, you make a brita, whatever it is people make, and they make all sorts of parties. It's fun, it's exciting. And then comes the real deal. The sleepless nights, the making the bottles, the diaper changes, the kids grow up, small kids, small problems, big kids, big problems, right? And a person starts to lose that initial joy and happiness that he had or she had. Leah understood all this. She understood that her happy and excitement will eventually disappear. So she wanted to permanently ingrain her feelings of happiness so it never disappears. So to do this, she built her gratitude into the name of Yehuda. Every time I say Yehuda, I'm going to be thinking how I'm supposed to be happy and thankful to Hashem for giving me these babies. She wanted to preserve her happiness. Rav Pam says today, Jewish weddings are very opulent, very fancy, very rich. This is Rav Pam's time. Imagine Rav Pam's still Bukharian weddings today. How fancy and rich. You have the cranes taking videos there, right? You have multiple cameramen, right? Large sums of money are spent on professional photographers and his staff. They capture the pictures for eternity. And these pictures are frequently studied during the early years of marriage. As soon as you get them, you look at them, everyone come, you look at them. And after a while, they put up, he says, we are relegated to an upper shelf in a closet to remove once a year for pre-Pesach dusting. Right? That's what happens. He asks, or Pam would ask, what was the purpose for the pictures from the Hatunah? What was the purpose for the wedding pictures? He says the wedding pictures play a very vital role. Because there's some times in marriage where things are not so good. Not so bitter. And they're not so happy. There's anger. People are bitter at each other. He says, that's the time you're supposed to pull out your wedding pictures. You look at them and say, look how happy I was. Look how many friends came. Look at her. Look at my wife. Look at me. And that's supposed to come back and bring those initial feelings of simcha, of happiness, how excited you are. And that's supposed to start and give you back that excitement to rework on your marriage. He says, there's Pam saying, this is the purpose of wedding pictures. Your Hatuna pictures was to look at them as a reminder of the initial joy that should not be forgotten.
It just reminds me of how skinny I was.
Yeah, I don't fit in anything that I wore in my wedding either. But Baruch Hashem, Hapam Moedes Hashem, we have Ksav Sefer, we have from Rav Pam, we had the idea of what Odeh and Modeh, to admit and to think, and how they interrelate. We talked about Eliphaz and how Yitzchak, knowing how bad Eliphaz was, still gave him a hug and embraced him both physically and spiritually, and how that helped for Yaakov to survive and for a whole Jewish nation to survive. As well as we talked about in the beginning about what it means to really sleep. Just like Yaakov was able to sleep, and Tzaddikim are able to sleep, which means that we put our emunah in Hashem, and then we definitely could sleep. Be'ezat Hashem, we should take these lessons to heart and try to implement them as we live our lives. It's going to help us to sleep. It's going to help us to keep our family together, and as well will keep us happy. Be'ezat Hashem. We'd like to wish everyone a Shabbat Shalom.